And thanks everybody for being here. I am Matt Sullivan with TechCom Tools. We're going to have an interview today with Julian Murfitt of Mekon Systems, and he is their CEO. Mekon is a lovely company that I do work with on the other side of the pond. I am going to let Julian, however, give his own interview so that I don't muck it up. So, Julian, good to see you again.
Hi, well, good to see you. And in your part of the world, your time zone, that's a rarity, right?
That is true, yeah. Usually, we were chuckling earlier that today we've got a bit of an echo because of your office. Usually we've got a little bit of a lag in the transmission because you're working in the UK and I'm over here on the West Coast. So 16 servers between us probably. Indeed.
I only wish that I could angle the camera so you could see what I can see outside. Because I'm just looking over the Bay Area of San Francisco. It's a beautiful blue sky day, and I can see the ferries coming in and out of the port. So down in San Francisco.
You know, that's not my first interview with people with better views than myself during the interview.
The good thing is I can see it reflecting in the window in front of me as well, so I can still enjoy that while we're talking.
Yeah. Well, Julian's going to be at the Mekon, not at the Mekon conference, at the LavaCon conference, representing Mekon, of course. And your conference title is Conference Room Prototyping, a low-cost, high-value approach to selecting the solution you really need. And so wanted to get in touch with you today, give you a chance to talk about why you chose this as your topic, you know, what went into the that thought process, and kind of give folks a sense of who you are to get them interested in coming to see your session. So why don't you go ahead and take it away and let me know what you're planning on, talking about at the conference.
Indeed. Well, this will be my second time at LavaCon, thanks to Jack's invite. And first time to speak. I've been supporting Noz in previous years. I know you interviewed a few days ago. And so we've got a stand there. Mekon has pretty well... we've got places and people all over the world, to be honest, and certainly customers all over the world. But our head office is based in London. We've been doing more and more work in North America, and hence why I'm over here actually this week. I'm here in the Bay Area for seeing a whole bunch of clients and prospective clients. And hence really our interest in supporting LavaCon, because it was a really good conference last year. It was an interesting group of people, slightly different take on some of the other events, a different spread of types of people that are attending. So that was kind of the background. And as a company, my role, as I think you mentioned, as CEO, so I tend to get to see people from all walks of life, and I'm dealing with everything from, making the coffee for the staff right through to trying to make some decisions somewhere down the line. And our business has always been focused around documentation, content, how we create, manage, and deliver it. And we have some of our own technology, but primarily we're a neutral company that works with the vendors that we think can deliver what our customers need. So we've enjoyed the opportunity to work with customers who are trying to understand what their future needs are and work out what possibly the change of processes are that are going to require that, so a content strategy of some description, and then look at the technology stack that underpins that. And that's really where this submission came from. We've for a long time believed that technology is only something to support what your real desire is. It's not the primary thing you choose. We're not buying technology for technology's sake. We're buying it because we believe it will help us to achieve the goal ultimately that we've set out. Okay, so if we have a strategy that might be to provide better end customer self-service, for instance, then, or maybe we want to reduce at a tactical level some of our translation costs, then maybe there are some things that we can benefit from, the likes of structured content and maybe connecting up some of the silos that always exist in the companies we work in. But ultimately, the technology is only therefore to underpin it. And what we see so often is, I kind of relate it to the sweet shop scenario. You're hungry, you fancy a bit of a sugar rush, so you go in the sweet shop and you're overwhelmed by the collection and selection of what you can eat, Hershey bars through to, you know, Cadbury's cream eggs. And so what we're trying to do is take that away and shift your attention onto the change process that you might be going through. And the conference room, I mean, prototype might be the thing to focus on first. What is a prototype? And I'm going to quote you because one of the quotes that I found, it says, by definition, a prototype is an early sample or model to test a concept or process, and then perhaps act in some way to replicate this and to be learned from. Okay, so this is different from this type is a prototype rather than actually a proof of concept or a pilot. And the thing about a pilot, you might well use a pilot to test a small work group, maybe test out certain types of documents. Maybe you're going to run a pilot for one product line or something like that. But at this type stage, it's a prototype before you've made that investment. You think there is a need for change. Maybe it's to move into an XML domain. Maybe that's DITA. But at that stage, do you really know what technology is going to support that? Are you going to use some form of authoring tool? Is it going to be a CMS? Okay, well, maybe there are a few out there that you can do that with. And what we've found, and what I want to share at the event, is effectively a range of case studies where we've sat down with customers and put them in a conference room. We call it a conference room prototype because literally put the right people in a conference room with the right sample of content and hopefully the right user stories. And I say hopefully because at this stage, they are what we think are the right user stories. And we will also put what we think might be the right technology stack in the room. Okay. Now, once we have that, the idea is we spend a couple of days actually working through that and having some hands-on. This isn't a vendor doing a demo to show you it in its best light. This is an opportunity for you to get some hands-on of how life will be with this system if you adopted it. And I'll use perhaps an analogy here of you go out and buy a new car and you're thinking, hey, why don't we go and test drive one? You know, that makes sense, doesn't it? So we go down to the supermarket, maybe the car supermarket, and we say, yeah, interested in trying out a car. Can I go for a test drive? And the guy goes, yeah, that's fine. Have you got your license? And you go, oh, I don't know how to drive. Oh, you don't know how to drive, but you want to test drive it. Well, yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? Now, does that sound familiar? You're going to test drive a CMS, and you've never learned how to use one. You may be using unstructured FrameMaker, but you've never used structured FrameMaker. So that's quite a big step. That requires you to learn some new skills. Yeah. So I'm quite keen for people to try and separate the idea of selection from understanding what life's going to be like. So again, back to the car. So, okay, we do know how to drive a little bit. So if you were actually being taught to drive at the same time, you would end up being overwhelmed by all of these new interfaces. You've got this clutch, possibly, if you're in Europe mostly. You've got this indicator stalk. You know, why do I need to do indicating? What's that for? Is that obligatory, or do you use it if you feel like it? Oh no, we like to tell other drivers that you're going to turn, right? Really? Do I have to do that? Now, if you then apply that to an XML world, you might say metadata. What's that for? Well, that helps us when we want to search for content later. Do I need that? Is that relevant to me? I don't think I need metadata. Well, okay, we've got some work to do here. So we're trying to develop an understanding of something that seems quite inane, but later has quite an impact on our success. So what we're trying to do with the competent prototype is to give someone some exposure and to get some hands-on. And one of the lessons we learned a little while ago is that at one stage we were doing very much a comparison. And this can be one of the values of doing a conference room prototype, is that you do it with two systems. And if you sat down with a vendor for a couple of days and then sat down with another one, that may well provide you with some useful information. But actually, what we found is that people then start feature checking. So they go, well,
sure.
that has this feature, and that one has this feature. And if you know from yourself, from the structured frame days, we have this nice structured view in frame, and other systems don't always work quite in the same way. And then other people in the XML world will say, oh yeah, but we don't like WYSIWYG. That's not something you do in the XML world. Well, actually, frame users love that if they're interested in that type of way. And perhaps there are other aspects of this where you start chasing features when. In fact, the feedback we've had from one of our customers, they said what we really needed to do was to concentrate a bit more on the process. How will lives change when we're having to deal with trying to do reuse, for instance? And what does reuse actually mean in the real world when we're a team of 10 or 15 authors? And can, in some way, during a conference room prototype, can we somehow see what that's going to feel like and actually make sure it is something that was important to us? So it's a human factor that I think you help gain from this, the change management piece. So it's not just about selecting a tool, it's about making sure actually your initial thoughts on what your user stories are actually stack up in the real world.
Well, I like some of the things that you said there. And using that conference room prototype as a tool, I've heard perhaps similar processes referred to as blueprinting, whether it's an initial project or a vetting of the conversation itself. So I really like what you're saying with the conference room prototype, because it gives you a chance to get in with your client and for both of you to have a give and a take so that your client can educate you while you educate your client perhaps on the things that are most important to them, help to draw out of them the things that are important to them in their initiative.
Yeah, I mean, specifically in Mekon's terms, and this is my presentation is definitely not a sales pitch. In fact, it's far from it. I want to give some ideas to people to help them perhaps do this themselves. Yeah. Of course, we'd love to be involved. Our expertise is that we've done it many times, and therefore we can guide you. And the piece here is that we create an interface between the people who own the technology and are trying to show it to you in your best light, and the people who will ultimately use it perhaps are inexperienced with some of the nuances of the world of CMS and creating content. And that I'm sure they're very familiar with their own content, but how might life change with this implementation? So you're definitely learning as you go along, and you have to interpret and perhaps re-explain to get into some specifics, branch and merge. You can end up spending quite a lot of time looking at the details of branch and merge and how that might impact on a system. Yeah, but much better to do it early on before you've actually committed to a particular investment.
Well, yeah, and so I like what you're doing with this presentation, because certainly Mekon, anybody that knows Mekon is going to know you're not in say the team facilitation business. You're not out to coach somebody or to get an engagement for that purpose for something specifically. But I like that you're sharing what you as an organization have found as a tool that we can all use in order to more rapidly, more efficiently get to to specifying the project, so that we can all get moving forward on the project.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, one of the things that I hope to share in the presentation is our take on what is a user story. When you look at RFPs and tender documents, you get these requirement specs, and they can be quite scary. They're written with all good intentions by people who are very professional and very capable. Yeah. But sadly, they so rarely hit the money on what actually they really need. Yeah. They can be quite easily misinterpreted. Yeah. And some of them are unbelievably detailed. And then some of them are so woolly that you think, where the hell are we going with that? And so we've tried to develop a way of describing these, starting with user cases or use cases, which we're now moved into user stories. So I want to try and share a little bit about that to give people an insight into how might they describe theirs, and help them to, to formulate some view. Not too high level, but also giving scope for the vendor to explore some granularity, but in a guided way.
So a question for you: do you often get, when you're working to someone who you would pitch the conference room prototype, is this often in response to an RFQ that is too detailed or not detailed enough? Are you saying, thanks for asking, what we would recommend is this small, because this is also what I do, is I will pitch a much smaller engagement, say 10% of the total or a quarter of the total, and say, I really think that this is what you need to do. You're not tight enough, or your level of detail is not appropriate yet. Let us work with you to define that. We're going to give you something of value at the end of that. If you choose to use us because we're a great fit, that's great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That happens not very often, because once people have got onto the road of a tender, they tend to be very, they want to do it that way. It's true to say that so many IT systems fail, and the reason they fail is very rarely because the technology doesn't fit. It's because the processes, the people didn't fit. And so we're trying to catch them before they get to that point. It doesn't always happen, and sometimes we catch them at that point, and they will change direction slightly.
Right.
In an ideal world, we're catching them when they go, we feel that there is a different world out there, there is a need for change, but we're just not quite sure what it is. And in fact, then we can engage in a more holistic process of interviewing various stakeholders, looking at a cross-sectional view of the business, understanding where their pain points are. If we can get to the executive board, find out what keeps them awake at night, and then connect that with what the tech pubs team perhaps, or the support team, can do to help support them. That's a good way to find money in the executive team, if you can find ways to help them sleep at night, right?
Yeah.
And so that tends to be then a whole process that we go through, which will eventually end up with some user stories, a good understanding of what they're trying to achieve, how they're going to change the experience that the user has when they engage with that company, what's the customer going to feel when they're interacting with their content. Maybe they have a self-service need. That there's a big change around silos. We're trying to work out how we can connect maybe the training department with tech pubs and support. And this is only just embryonic. It has to be said that not many companies have had the opportunity to do this. And then ultimately, we'll give them a bit more guidance on the system or systems they might choose to help them narrow that choice down, and then help make sure that they've made the right choice, and then do the whole process of rollout. And something I didn't mention, but the most successful conference room prototypes we've done involve some separate pre-training before they even get near it. It kind of relates to my point about the car. We're going to help you with a test drive, but before we do that, we want to give you some fundamental rules about driving so that you can make sure you're making the right choice. And while I'm on that point, I must make this view of, when I said I wanted a car, actually what I really need is a form of transport. And that's fundamental, because if a bike will do, please buy a bike. And by the way, if I've got 10 people in the family, you need a bus.
I've been fond of saying, those the 911 that you might really have your eyes set on. That's a lovely car, but if you need to take a regular trip off to the dump to get rid of some rubbish, you're not going to be quite as happy with that.
Exactly.
With that
right. Exactly. So that form of transport does seem quite a long way away, but that's ultimately what we're talking about when we look at CMS. And as long as we can focus on that, actually, we'll start pulling out what the real pain and what the real interest is.
Great. Yeah. So that gives us, and so we've got an overall sense of why one would want a prototype. Would you think, and of course, no presenter has everything 6 weeks out, all polished and ready to go. What sort of things can we tease people with that now that we know the intention behind the prototype, what would you expect would you have in your presentation beyond the reasons for prototyping? Can you think of your presentation?
Yeah, well, certainly some background. What I'd like to do is to give people some understanding of the reasons, as you mentioned. I'd like the people that come to have some takeaways, like a little bit of a model of what a user story could look like.
Perfect.
From our experience. And how you might validate or measure how we've done that with a few clients. How do you actually rate a particular user story?
Great.
And then how you might present that back to your team once you've done it. So we've done a bit of work with a few clients where we've done some radar diagrams to show a spread. That's particularly good with some of the comparison pieces that we've done. So I think we'll be able to give a few examples of that, and hopefully some examples of maybe a bad user story or a use case. It's a bit dangerous with that sort of thing because it could be a bit opinion based, and I don't want people to go, well, what does he, is this real? That I thought that was a good one, but I certainly want them to have some takeaways around that.
Okay, so perhaps a checklist of what you use that's successful, some advantages, and some tools that you could use within that prototyping. Some ideas of what worked, what didn't work, and therefore how you might approach it. Yeah, fantastic. Now I think we're starting to edge into the fall conference season, if there is such a thing. Well, how much travel are you going to be doing for Mekon over the next few months?
I've got quite a bit. I'm in California this week. I'm off to LavaCon, of course, in not too long away. We've then got the TCOM conference in Germany, and Joanne, of course, did a Europe conference in Munich. So that's I run. There's 2 or 3 other events I'd like to have gone to, but it's just getting too much. The point where you can't keep up with them. So I'd like to have gone to another couple, but I'm looking forward to JAX. It's in Portland, which is always a great place to go, and I'm told that's good for tax-free reasons as well, because they don't charge tax there, so that's good.
Yeah, well, I hear you were telling me earlier that you got a chance to pop around San Francisco a little bit on a bicycle.
So, first time I've managed to get a chance to cycle from, I was just on the north side, and I cycled up the fairly steep hill on a single speed gear bike, which was fairly scary, which had these, if you're familiar with it, this back pedal where you use the brakes. So the actual handlebars don't have any brakes. You have to back pedal. And I was about a mile from the hotel and the chain came off. And that means you have no back pedal braking. And so my feet are dragging on the floor to stop. And I'm thinking I better get this checked out before I go any further. So I found a friendly bike shop so we could adjust the chain. And then I cycled up onto the Golden Gate and cycled over. I'll get some pictures for you. You're not allowed to stop when you're cycling over. I got told off for stopping and taking a picture. But I managed to do that quickly. And it's a great ride, but gets pretty windy out there, actually. In the middle of the Golden Gate, it gets real windy down that across the water there. That water, the wind coming across the water. Well, those fixed gear bicycles can be a little tricky. I've not been on one myself, but at least you weren't clipped into the pedals. That's that's true. It was good fun though, and a great ride. Anybody who's out in San Francisco area, it's a must now. I'm really pleased I've had a chance. In fact, yesterday I was up the mountain as well and down on the beach. It's amazing. You can go from so many different experiences in one area. It's no wonder people like living over here. Well, I will. We'll have to share a pint while we're there. When I was a youngster in college, part of, we'll say, my hazing process in a fraternity was to drive across that Golden Gate Bridge and stop traffic. So we had, I think, 5 cars across to stop every lane of the Golden Gate Bridge. Got out, took photos of that. So wow, that was risky. and the statute of limitations is long past on that. So very good.
Good. Well, let's see. Anything else you can tell us about Mekon in general? Things that you're doing, things you want everybody to know?
One thing I would say, if you do come to the conference, and we won't talk about this in the presentation because that's that's aimed at this one subject. But one of the things that I'm really interested in is about personalized content and how we deliver content in different ways. The end customer is becoming more discerning, more demanding, and we see a great need for delivering content in multiple ways, multiple platforms. It's becoming, in a way, old hat to say, multi-channel publishing. But you know what? Surprisingly, so few companies are really achieving it yet. And so we've invested a lot in this space. And I'm interested in people's feedback. I'd love to talk to anyone who's thinking about how do they deliver content in different ways, how they might work with other departments like learning, and therefore provide information to learning teams so they can create their own learning packages. Maybe there's buzzwords like tin can and how you can therefore use the Experience API to track a customer's experience, and how that gets related back to source content in the Tech Pubs team, how we can drive using metadata new information to the customer. When we go to Amazon, it's standard to be looking at a book and it says, hey, you might want to read this book if you're reading that one. And yet when we're looking for technical information, we don't get offered that type of information by default. We have to go and search for it. And the technology we're interested in and we've been doing work on for some years now, it allows us to actually drive information based on the habit of the user, and based on what we know about the user, maybe based on their CRM login or something. So if you're coming to the event, I'd love you to come over to the stand and talk. I'm going to have one of my senior consultants, Mark Poston, at the event, who's a great out-of-the-box thinker around this space, and we'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, I've been noting for a few years now that between structure, accessibility, stringent content models, content marketing, just so many different topics, everything that you and I do within information, within content, all tends to buoy the rest of it. And so your Amazon example is right on point, where those things that give us frightening stories about how much Target knows about their end consumer is kind of where everything is at. That somebody was paying attention is really the only difference here. The information's there, and if we can use that to allow our clients to get the information that they need to their end users, it's a whole new world.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, let's meet these guys at the event and let's see if we can break out of the paradigm of a set document based on a table of contents. Something that goes beyond that.
Yep. None of it lives in a vacuum. So, well, what a great place to break the interview. So thanks everybody for being here. We will look forward to hopefully seeing a bunch of you at LavaCon. News on this end, Jack recently gave us, just a few days ago, a $100 discount code on the LavaCon registration. So, Julian, if you could share that with your audience, I would love for you to do that. The details of that are going to be right below this interview, and so we've got that. There's also a registration link where if you use the link on this site, that will go straight to the LavaCon registration. That will also give you a free hour of services or consulting with me. So lots of goodies. Adobe's got their Adobe Day, their half-day Adobe Day event with a free lunch. So there is indeed a free lunch. And so there's lots going on. But we hope to see you in October. And if not, please check in with us if we can help you do anything else.
Wonderful. Great talking to you, Matt. Look forward to seeing you and anyone else who's coming to LavaCon.
You got it. Thanks for your time, Julian.